All right, we are live. Let me confirm we are live on the social channels real quick, and then we are going to get this started. We are doing, of course, recording. This is for Friday's episode of the podcast. We throw this out there to the world. All right. Let's get this thing started. All right, so we're going to jump in. I'll bring our guest in here in a second. So just take a little pause. Thanks for those who are watching live. If you can't watch the whole thing, of course, it'll be in the podcast form over the next couple of days. So let's do that. Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. Excited to have you back for another episode of the podcast and another guest episode. We are, the format here for those that might be new, we do 2 episodes with guests, 5 solo episodes each and every week. And so we are into the 160 straight plus days of the podcast, and excited always kind of bring in different guests with different, kind of approaches and perspectives. And in some cases, we also bring in some projects that, I look at as innovative, as I look at that we can really, kind of educate ourselves on and kind of bring that to light. And so I'm excited to I'm going to bring in right now on the screen for our video side, Anthony. And Anthony is one of the co-founders of Bulls and Apes. So Anthony, welcome to NFT 365. Excited to have you.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me. Very, very stoked to be here.
Sweet. So yeah, give us a little bit of background about yourself as far as like kind of your background, and then introduce us to Bulls and Apes. And I have some, of course, some questions for you. And the project's minting out at the end of the month for those that are kind of jumping on here. And for me, I was kind of brought in to understand the project over the last month and a half or so, and excited to learn more on this episode as well. So yeah, give us a little intro of yourself, and then a little bit about the project.
Yeah, sure. So I come from a corporate background, got a 20 plus year in a more traditional corporate environment. Always been focused on strategy, developing teams, culture, scalable businesses. I've done a lot of M&A, and technology delivery has always been core to that. And so I've always been interested in new technology. I missed Web 1 a bit. I was just right out of college, so really didn't get a chance to really capture Web 1. Web 2 never really interests me. But then when I heard about Web 3, when I started hearing about NFTs and thinking about the power of the technology, I started to jump in. And then once I got in, I saw the community aspect. And since culture is always a big thing of mine, leadership development and connecting with people, that culture aspect. The first time I went into Discord, it was VFriends Discord. I mean, just seeing the action and seeing people engage. And I was like, wow, this is social. Forget Instagram and Facebook and, and all of that. This was social. And that really just started to pull me in. And I was like, I need to be involved in this. I really need to be involved. And so I started volunteering my time with a couple of projects I was involved in, wound up meeting the other co-founders. So Manny Coates and Guy Puo. During those exercises and trying to help other projects, we connected, really started sharing some ideas, and we're like, you know what? There's a lot of good in this space. The technology's great, the community's great, but there's a lot lacking too. And so we wanted to really jump in, and we thought we had a lot to offer with our backgrounds. Guy and Manny are both serial entrepreneurs. I've got this strong corporate background. Like, I think we can make a difference, and let's try to do our own project.
I love that. And I love that kind of origin. And, I think, I can relate having, I worked corporate world for most of my early career, and now last 8 years on the entrepreneur side. And for our listeners, like we talk a lot about, the trust and like the research that we do each and every day for our, buying an NFT every day for a year really starts with the founders, right? Understanding, can we trust the founders, what their backgrounds were or are. And, for me, that was definitely a green light for, as I started researching your project. And it, when I went to the website for the first time, I remember the art just being like, man, this art is, beyond impressive as far as 3D. It also, from a standpoint of like bulls and apes, it doesn't feel like another ape project. So I give the team credit for that piece. But then there are some aspects of the project that, we can't kind of walk around. I mean, the 6-month money back guarantee jumped out at me. And I have been a part of 2 projects, I believe, that were last year that had a money back component, but nothing like what you guys are offering. So I guess the first question is art. Where's the inspiration, the artist? Give us a little bit about the art side, and then we're going to tap into the money back guarantee piece as well.
Sure, no problem. So Manny Coates, one of the co-founders, he's got a 3D software background. Very, very creative guy. I'm just super impressed by the stuff that he's able to churn out. And he's supported by a pretty large team that we have. And anybody that knows 3D art, it's not just drawing on your iPad, right? It literally, I get fascinated by it when they show me, because I'm not an art guy, right? I'm more the corporate operations guy. But it goes from like a clay model to needing to be textured and molded, and then the clothes all. When you first see the clothes, you're like, wow, that's that. And then when you see the final product, you're like, holy crap, there's a lot that goes into it. And the way we're doing it, you could cheat on 3D. So you could create 3D assets and just layer them on top of each other. Right. We're not doing that. Every single one of our NFTs is going to be a fully rendered 3D model, which means it takes more time and more resources. And you think about the cost of there's render farms that you've got to rent out, and there's a lot of cost that goes into it. And so that's the art. And then from an eye perspective, when we're looking at the art, we're thinking long term, right? We're in this for the long term, and we're building out an IP. We're building out a brand. We call ourselves, we're an entertainment and media company that was born in Web3, but we're not being confined to Web3. We're always going to have a Web3 backbone, but we're looking at our art and saying, can we see this in a Pixar film? That's the kind of barometer that we've got when we're looking at it. And, we don't want it to be overly realistic, but we don't want it to be cartoony. We want it to be fun. We want people to be able to connect with it. So when you'll see our bulls and eventually the apes as well, it takes an all walk of life component to it. You'll see a police officer, you'll see an astronaut, you'll see somebody going hunting, so you'll see an athlete. It's an all walks of life kind of approach to it.
I love it. I mean, the art is beyond impressive. We'll definitely include the in the show notes here. And for anyone that jumps to the website, you just scroll down and you can see examples of a lot of the art. And I love the surfing. The surfing one is a really cool one. And I mean, I just think the art itself. We bought a lot of projects. Almost 1,000 NFTs in my bag as a whole, and it's very rare that I'm like, wow, this is a 3D approach that jumps out. And I will also say, like, it's also pretty impressive from a founding team perspective that your artist is also one of the founders, which I think is a beautiful, not as common as many might think scenario. So I'm curious, I mentioned the money back guarantee side. How did that come to life? And like, what was the original thought process on that? And how can people think about this idea of, a 6-month money back guarantee, which I know for most of our listeners, I probably haven't even thought of an NFT project with that kind of offering. First
of all, I mean, you think about 6 months in NFT land, it's like a lifetime, right? Like it's amazing to even think through. Everybody says that NFT time is completely different. It's like you're in a time warp. But we weren't thinking about it. Just to be completely frank, we weren't thinking about money back guarantee when we started the project. What we were looking at, we were focused on fully doxed founders, professional background, and pre-funded project. Meaning we're bringing capital to the table. We're not raising capital with our mint. We've got the capital and we know what we want to build. So it's not about raising the capital. But what happened was, we did our project reveal when we, announced our Twitter and Discord, and it was right around the time of Squiggles. And so you had all of this, remember Squiggles had a doxed founder, right? Quote unquote. And, all this blowback was there, and we're like, oh my God, what are we getting involved in? We wanted to, we're bringing legitimacy to the space. All of the marketing plans that we had, everything was being deemed a scam and a cash grab and a rug pull. And so we're sitting there putting our heads together, the 3 founders, and we're like, what are we going to do? And we're a bit disheartened. And then we said, you know what? We've got to lean into this because that's not us. we're here for the long term. We're bringing legitimacy to the space. And so Guy was like, well, how about we do a money back guarantee? And we're like, yeah, sure. We don't need the mint fund, so we could lock it up. And so we're like, yes, this is what we're going to do. We're doing it. We're going front and center with it. We put a press release out. We've got a PR firm that we're working with. And we're like, that's it. We're going in on it. It's going to be in the smart contract. It's going to be automated. Anybody, my sister who might buy it, she could go onto the website and I won't even know. She'll go on the website and hit refund. And that's what we wanted to be able to do. We wanted to be able to say, we go to our families and say, hey, you should buy one. We wanted to be able to say that with confidence and comfort, and provide them with confidence and comfort that it's not them just buying from us. They've got that protection there too.
Well, I love that approach, right? And I think you mentioned something, a pre-funded project, right? Which I don't think we hear that the language used like that too often, but like understanding it for our listeners, really NFT projects, majority of them have really created companies upside down or backwards or in reverse of what the traditional side of the fence, in the sense of you usually have the business plan, you have the proof of concept, you have established credibility, and then you raise funds. And let's face it, a majority of projects go the other way around. They kind of start up overnight. They're using the mint as kind of the fundraising, and then they're like, okay, well, now how do I implement? And we've talked a lot about last year, like a year ago over the summer, that was just the norm, and you could pretty much sneeze and out a NFT project and it would sell out overnight. But then you brought up kind of the squiggle side of the house and like the rug pulls that have been happening, but also just we are a much smarter NFT consumer and collector group, that we're learning things that we should see and trigger and flag. And I mentioned this to you kind of pre-show. Like when I remember I first got the link. It was I think it might have been like a week and a half before NFT LA. Someone had sent me the link to the project. And I will say my very first instinct was, this thing looks too good to be true. And I will tell you, too good to be true on my department is two things, because I'm not one that takes face value on anything. But as soon as I hear too good to be true, like it feels too good to be true, I'm like, damn, this is going to require more research for me to discover the legitimacy of the project, because there are some projects that I've kind of determined too good to be true, and then the more I research, get to know the founders, I'm like, oh man, this is great. Versus kind of what we saw with with Squiggles and even some of the pre-funded side, right? We knew that Squiggles, the amount of budget that they put out ahead of time, because they knew how much they were going to make on the mint, right? So they knew that side. So I love that you kind of addressed that piece of it. Talk a little bit about, you said you mentioned, the other two co-founders, entrepreneurial experience, yourself, background in the business side, both been in the web, all three been in the Web3 space for a good while. Talk to us a little bit about like maybe some of the things that excite you about, not only like utility, but the things that you've learned from other projects that you're going to make sure that are integrated in this project as well.
Yeah. So the first thing, and you've touched on it already, where a lot of projects get to mint, like that's the goal. And then it's like, okay, now what? And so then there's this letdown because there's not a plan in place. And so anyone who's run a business before, that it takes you a month or two to get a legitimate plan in place and to get people organized around it. Ramping up a team, recruitment, especially in the Web3 space, is very, very difficult. And we learned that early on. One of the big challenges was recruiting and getting a team in place. And we're still understaffed for sure, but we've got a strong core together. But anybody who's been in business and has run a project or who's tried to start a business knows that the ramp up takes a while. So if you could imagine this hype getting to mint, and we've all experienced it, and it sells out, and you're like, yes, this project's going to be awesome. And then 2 months later, you start taking action. Well, that's number one. We've got plans in place already on how to deliver and what that roadmap's going to look like. And we've got that core team together. We've got, about 20 people on the team, between the artists and project managers and people reaching out on collabs and ambassadors. So we've got that core together that we can build off of pretty rapidly. And so that's number one. Number two is actually delivering what you say you're gonna deliver. And so we're really firm on, we're not just gonna say, yeah, we're gonna be in the metaverse, or yeah, we're gonna do merch. Sure, we want to do those things, absolutely. But when we put it on the roadmap, we're going to be certain that we're going to be able to deliver it. There's always different delays and stuff, but within a reasonable time frame.
I love that, and I will even say, like, just from the vision, the things that you're committing to deliver, there are elements of the tokenomics side of the house, and of course, being bulls and apes, right? There's like that component as well. I'm curious, I will just give, I give a lot of credit. I didn't end up being able to speak at NFTLA. I was originally booked. Unfortunately, I had a meeting with the FBI that was about my compromised wallet that I ended up having to kind of pass on that event. But I will say, I had a lot of people that I knew were at the event, that were at the event. Many of them, I was transferring some of my NFTs to their wallet so they could get into events. And almost all of them mentioned your project. And I will say, like, standing out from the noise at a NFT event, I've been now to 5 or 6 as a project, I think is not as common as maybe many would think. I'm curious, can you share a little bit about like what your strategy was for NFTLA, and maybe some of the things we could all learn from really bringing an NFT project to an event? Because I mean, kudos to the team. I mean, I was getting inundated from worlds that like are not even close, from people that aren't in the space that I've been like pulling in to like the true degens, and you guys got on their radars across the board. Give us a little bit about that event strategy that you guys approached.
Sure. So unfortunately, there was no strategy. We pulled it together like last minute. So what happened was, again, we think we have a compelling story, but we were having we have a very difficult time breaking through. All the noise and influencers that they're like, no, we're not taking any paid promotion. We're not doing this. So like any angle, we went through, I don't know how many marketing agencies that we lost money on because they were just complete crap, and they were doing shilling and bots and all this stuff. And we had to, just cancel contracts, lost money. We went through all of that. But then a little bit of a turning point was South by Southwest. Both of the other co-founders are from Austin. And so they wound up going to a couple of events that were in South by Southwest. And they realized that when people got to talk to them and see who they were, they're like, oh, wow, you're for real. Oh, you've got this experience. What's your project again? Oh, wow. And so that started happening. So very quickly, like NFTLA, we got to be there. And so we pulled it together real quick. We worked out a sponsorship deal. We wanted to have a presence there, and we just hopped on a plane and just got there. It was a last minute trip. And what we found there, and our strategy once we got there, was we're going to tell our story to as many people that we can grab. And so I think I listened to maybe one speaker. It was just constantly walking around and talking. And we were in the VIP lounge, which was great. We walked around to everyone's booth, and we would, listen to their side and then say, okay, well, yeah, we have a project too. And just the more people that we talked to, the more it started growing, even just at the event. And so it was this networking effect where, just being genuine, just being authentic, just telling our story, listening to other people and listening to what some of the challenges of the space are. And so it's really that combination of listening and then just being very genuine and very authentic. It just worked for us.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I was getting these messages, and actually one of our previous guests, Michael Stelzner, who is founder of Social Media Marketing World, he actually was texting me, I think, right after he initially heard from you guys. And he's like, Fanzo, do you know about this project? And I was like, yeah, a little bit aware of it. And I sent him like 3 questions to ask, because I was like, I knew that like he was, he was there and he was interacting. And of course he, was able to ask you guys some of the questions on my side. And I'll say part of that was like the beauty of like the authenticity and hearing more of your story. And you mentioned kind of like cutting through that noise, for those like, from a project perspective, how are you measuring like kind of, impact or momentum leading up to Mint Day? I believe Mint Day is April 29th, if we're correct. How are you kind of like tracking that and like thinking, because I will say you not only, Michael Stelzner, who was on the podcast, but you've teamed up with some of our projects that are good friends with. Bunny Buddies is a project that I, Ari and Mitch and the team become, some of my closest friends in the space. And you guys did a mega Twitter space this past weekend together. So I love like that. Like from my standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of collaboration, a lot of things going down. How are you guys kind of tracking momentum leading up to the mint date?
Yeah, sure. So there's this hard metrics that we're looking at. So we're looking at engagement on Discord. So what percentage of our community is actually engaging? And Discord does a nice job of showing us benchmarks, and we're well above benchmarks on the engagement. It's pretty cool to see. We're also looking at demographics, and so you're able to see geographic regions, and we've got some targets in place that we're measuring. Like I mentioned, we had some hiccups at the beginning with some of the marketing agencies, and we had bots all over the place in our Discord. We had bots on our Twitter. And now what we're seeing is a lot of those bots dropped off, and it's being replaced with high quality. So the numbers look relatively flat from where it was at the beginning, but that was all bots. But we're actually gaining some really quality community members. So looking at the engagement, looking at the number of posts in Discord, looking at retweets, looking at comments. And then you mentioned the Megaspace. So we build it as Megaspace and Megaspace 2. Megaspace 1, we had the max of about 1,008 people in Megaspace 1. And it was our first official Twitter space. We had 3,700 people pass throughout a 7.5 hour period. Megaspace 2, we got a lot of people saying, hey, 7.5 hours, we love you guys, but my God, that was long. Can you condense it? And we did. We condensed it to about 3 hours. And so across 3 hours, we got to 980, and we had well over 2,000, about 2,500 people pass through for Megaspace 2. So we did it again. And so that was a huge one. And then coming out of that, it's funny is, people that, you told the project about earlier on, they're like, oh yeah, sure. Oh, cool. You're doing something. Then all of a sudden they start to come back. Hey, can I get on your whitelist? And so you start seeing that, which is more anecdotal. That's more qualitative, but we're starting to see a lot of that too, which leads you to believe that, you are starting to break through the noise. But I'll tell you what, so we saw all of these projects, as you mentioned, just sell out overnight. And sell out with very little plan and, not having real business background. And so we naively thought it was going to be relatively easy, that we were going to, put our profiles out there and people were like, oh, wow, great business experience. It's not easy. It's a grind, and you got to get on Twitter spaces. We're finally breaking through and getting on some podcasts. We think it's really important for people to see us and hear us. So it's not easy. And if you think it's going to be easy, you're kidding yourself. And so it is a grind. Yes, we're early, which is the beauty of it, but it's still hard work.
No, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And, I appreciate the transparency, right? And, in full transparency to our listeners, I'm very transparent in any relationship that I have. And I was very blessed. We were able to kind of work with your team and offer some whitelist spots for our founders, members of our NFT 365 project. But that, that's kind of where where our relationship is established. And, I love that you brought up, some of the hiccups early on. And I will say, like, since I'm buying an NFT every day, I run scans on Twitter accounts. I'm in the Discord looking at bots. And I remember initially looking at your Twitter account was like, wow, there's a lot of what we call eggheads, right? There's a lot of Twitter accounts that don't have profile photos. And just to be clear for like those that are out there, there's a lot of profiles that don't have bots or that are paying for followers that have that as well, right? Twitter has, I've been a active user on Twitter for 10 plus years. I have 140 some thousand followers. And I know like when some of the tools trigger things, I have to go deeper than that. Right. And I've been ranting a little bit lately about, I have a real disgust for a lot of TikTok, quote unquote experts that are saying like, they'll say like this Twitter account has to be, they must have bought their followers because they're only getting like 30 retweets and they have 30,000 followers. And to me, that's like a very like, surface level way of looking at it. But I will say like the more I've followed your account, more I've been into your Discord, the activity is real, right? And for those that are maybe, because I think that's part of the problem in this space, is that if people get an impression, or there's a FUD, or even someone socializing like, hey, I saw this project had something, the whole point of do your own damn research is that we each have to do our own research. And I would argue doing your research more than once, like along a project's journey, as projects are getting to know. I will say, like, I listened to the recording from your Twitter space, and I actually texted my team. I was 30 minutes into that space. I was like, anyone who was in that space or heard that recording can put to bed a lot of the things that anyone might have thought of, just because we got to hear those stories. And so I'm curious, just from you mentioned, some of those early mistakes, but then kind of coming to life in the, kind of putting yourselves out there. You also have some complexities that are built in, right? You have the money back guarantee, you have the tokenomics, you have multiple pieces of art. How are you guys approaching kind of like educating your, either, especially even the people that might mint you for the very first NFT they mint, but also then on your roadmap as you're delivering, what is the kind of education plan to kind of onboard people into some of the more complex elements of your project?
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to meet a content creator at NFT LA, and hired him and brought him on full time. And so you see, Chris Darafeev is active on our Twitter and putting some videos out. Well, he's going to be doing bite-size videos, because we do know there's a lot of complexity there and there's layers to it, and not everybody's going to have the time to go and read through. Our website is basically like a white paper right now, right? There's a ton of information on there, but some people are going to want some bite-sized pieces. So we are going to put together some short videos. We're also going to put them on YouTube, so you could kind of do a playlist. So if somebody's new coming in, and they want to just go through the playlist and listen to everything that there is to know about the project, they'll be able to do that. But if somebody wants to just look at a particular aspect, they'll be able to pick it up, and it'll be a short video where they could take a quick view of the video and get their information rather quickly. So that is something that we're working on now, and we are going to put out there, because we do think it's important to have the long form and the short form for people to be able to consume, because everybody consumes differently.
For sure. And I will say, I'm a friend of Chris's. He reached out to me right after NFT LA and saying that he was going to team up with you guys. And that was another checkbox for me when I'm, in the research game, right? I think collaborating with, he's a creator that I've trusted. I've spent a ton of hours with him in Clubhouse rooms. I've watched, his content. He actually reached out to me about, using a couple of the sound bites and quotes from, some past interviews where he brought up some things. And I, of course, said yes. So I wanted to bring that in there, because I think, you mentioned earlier, figuring out the influencers, a marketing agency, but then kind of adapting and finding a creator that's going to help, do that. And, for our, one of the things that I've been offering to a lot of Discords, free of charge, is jumping in there and saying, hey, I have a cybersecurity background. My wallet was compromised, which then adds another layer. I'm willing to teach, and share some of those journeys, some of the things that we're learning. And so I love that you kind of brought that, into life as well, kind of collecting with a creator that is, integrated and doing some of the education. When you look at the mint date coming up, right? For those that, we're recording this, and the podcast episode will be out right around the same day, but, almost a week or so out from mint date. I'm curious from a standpoint of you mentioned you're using some heavy 3D rendering, right? You have definitely some complexities with, the 6 day money back guarantee. I can just say from someone that went from having 5 wallets to I now have 25 wallets, thanks to this compromised wallet. There's some complexities there, right? On how do I get my money back guarantee when I'm transferring my NFTs to maybe a cold storage, or I'm moving them, between wallets. I'm curious, there's a lot happening, and for anyone that's out there, no project should ever be expected to deliver perfection. It's pretty much the only guarantee that we have in the NFT space is that with every launch, there's going to be, things that are going to happen. I mean, many people look at VFriends as a, gold standard, but they forget that it was 13 days to roll out VFriends 1. Book Games was delayed 3 times, and even VFriends 2 was just delayed about 40 hours. So, and they have Vayner NFT, and it's Gary Vaynerchuk, right? So I always love to level set that, because it's very easy for us to kind of really set expectations that really are things that we can't achieve. So I'm curious, as a founder, as you're kind of ramping up at the end, what are the things that are right now you're not only focused on, but like you're really like hoping like these things go right and like things that you're kind of have all of your attention.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few pieces of complexity. Number one, you mentioned already the rendering, right? So that takes some time to do it right with the 3D model. It takes some time. So there's a risk area there for sure. The other risk area is that when you think about the traditional, and I talked about that layering can happen outside of the art application. So, it could happen outside of Photoshop, or it could happen outside. But the way we're doing it, we have to do the trait generation and the randomization of the traits within the program, which means that the metadata is not available for us to be able to implement in the smart contract until we're done actually producing all of the assets. So there's a piece to that there. We're getting the smart contracts audited. So the auditing needs to happen as well. And that of course needs to happen after all the development's done. And then you just mentioned the refund. The official on our website, officially, you can't move the NFT out of your Mint wallet in order to be eligible for the refund. Now, a ton of people, for security reasons, have come back and said, "Come on, that's not fair. We want to be secure. Can you come up with a solution?" So that was a last-minute feedback that I'm working with the tech team on now to see how we can accommodate that. So there's a couple of approaches in place, but that's not finalized yet, and we've got to get that in place and then get the contract audited. So yeah, there's a lot we're working on right now, to be completely honest. There's a lot of complexities, and we've got a couple of our artists are in Ukraine, and so literally they've been going from location to location to try to keep on working while it's a war going on in their country, and so that adds some complexity. Manny, who's driving the art, he got COVID over the weekend. Luckily, symptoms aren't bad, but look, this. I'm just being open. There's a lot.
No, we're living in crazy times, right? We have impacted from a war and a global pandemic. Yep. Not to mention a space that we are creating the culture on the fly, and we're recording this. And like my last 4 hours were upended on 420 thanks to Coinbase dropping the beta version of their NFT project. And all of a sudden, I got access, and then they had some things different on the creator side, creator fees. And I was like, it's opening up, so this space is wild on that side. I also love that you're open, even if the feedback isn't implementable, right? The fact that you're open to it, right? And I will say, like, we're preaching, based on, my experience with my wallet, also, like minting from a wallet that is more of a burner wallet. And then once you're minting, transferring into a ledger or a hardware wallet. But I will also say, like, for me, projects that are offering these type of things, this is also one of those things like, okay, maybe I take the precautions and mint directly from my ledger wallet. Now, for anyone that's minted from a hardware wallet, it's a little bit, if the mint's going fast, your chance of like kind of keeping up is, you have to deal with your lightning cable, your unlocking of a physical device. Literally mine's plugged in right here as I was doing some things pre-show, but I do love that you're kind of trying to kind of approach that and figure it out. And I will tell you, I've been in contact with both MetaMask, OpenSea, and then we had a conversation through kind of from a blockchain perspective on like, how can we kind of fix that, right? Like, the idea that we should be able in ways to map wallets, predetermined mapped wallets ahead of time, where it's not, because let's face it, if you give a little bit, people are going to use bots and automation, and they're going to take advantage of that 6-month guarantee. And for all those that are, good people doing good things that are like, why can't they just make it work? The people that are scamming and that are looking to make a quick, 0.1 ETH to 1 ETH return across a big piece, they're going to pound the smart contract for any weakness, especially if there's a money back guarantee component. So I respect the fact that this isn't as easy as like, oh, we'll just turn on a switch. But I do believe like the blockchain, because it's transparent, we should be able to implement that. And I know some of our listeners work for companies like Premint and a couple of the projects that are out there. I'm going to push them, and happy to share some of my ideas and some of the things that we've been talking about, because I think that's an important factor here. Is we want people to be safe, but we want to protect the projects and the smart contract from the bad actors that are in play as well. So I appreciate that you mentioned that, and the fact that you're listening to some of the feedback. As far as the mint experience goes, there's pre-sales, there's whitelist, there's the mint, there's the reveal. Can you give us a little bit about what does that look like for you guys, and maybe even a little bit of like why you went with the approach that you went with? Because I think there's some innovation in that space as well.
Yeah, so our original approach was we were going to do a small whitelist and then a Dutch auction after. And then, looking at, again, all of the cash grabs that were out there, the Dutch auction a lot of times is just trying to maximize FOMO, and it's trying to maximize, and look, there's a lot of solid Dutch auctions that went out, and it, and especially when you do a true Dutch auction and you get to the bottom price, which most projects aren't doing. They're doing,
right,
whatever so it creates that FOMO, and that was our original approach. But then we looked at it and said, you know what, we want to be as fair as possible. We're doing, originally we thought more of the marketing was going to be in place, but then we shifted to pure organic. And since we were doing the organic, we said, let's just go heavy on the whitelist, and let's try to sell out via the whitelist, and not even get to a public sale. But, as you know, there's industry averages that are out there of, you got to get this X number of wallets on in order to sell this many mints and all of that. And so one of the things that we're doing now, because we are gathering some traction on the whitelist, we want to be very, very fair to the people that signed up early. So we're contemplating, again, this is some feedback that we received, right, looking at how do we chunk it up so that, people who signed up early get an earlier start than people that are there, and then earlier start than public sale. So we are looking at trying to make it as fair as possible. To your point, again, just listening to customer feedback as much as possible. At the same time, we want to sell out too, right? So it's how do you keep on, keep the momentum going? So we're balancing all of that out. The other thing that we are talking about right now is when do we reveal? And it tell you right now, it's not going to be an extended, 2 weeks later we're going to reveal, or any garbage like that. I hate waiting.
I hate waiting too.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to be as fair as possible with that. So we haven't figured out exactly when the reveal is going to be, but it'll be something where it's something like 48 hours after the mint starts, and some period of time, maybe like an hour after sell out or something like that. I don't know. We're still figuring it out, but it'll be kind of like that.
Well, and for those that are listening to this, and you're thinking about launching your own NFT project, I would love for you to go back and listen again and listen to the different components that are testing, trying, learning, exploring, realizing, okay, pulling back on that, figuring out the different nuances. I mean, something as simple as most people from the outside would say, do I do a whitelist or not a whitelist? But it's way more complex than that, right? How do we avoid gas wars? How do we reward those that are our earliest fans? If we're doing phases, do we limit the max amount that someone can buy, right? And all of these things, if in some cases, one of those things done either wrong or done in a way that might, end up making a project a lot harder to sell out, or alienating one group or another. And so I appreciate you kind of breaking that down, because I mean, I'm getting to a point right now where, I'm excited to onboard new people into this space, but the trend that I've been seeing is people that are onboarding now, right now in this current, they see what's out there and they're like, I'm ready to launch an NFT project.
Yep.
And I've been so I'm hell bent on saying you must be a collector before you're a creator. I firmly believe in this space. It's essential, but it's also because some people just see oh, you pick art, you have some utility, you have a website, you have a Twitter account, a Discord, there's these check boxes. And, I will say we launched NFTs for the podcast back in November. I learned a lot from that launch myself, now advising a couple of projects. And for our upcoming PFP project that we're launching, I'm factoring a lot of this in. And even, some of the question side is for me, I know what we're going through. So I really appreciate that honesty. Last question I had, are kind of not really last question, but I'm kind of bringing this full front. You have a fully doxed team, amazing art. You have a extremely active Discord. You made a splash South by Southwest, NFT LA, but there are the Moonbirds launch that was this weekend, right? There's almost this weird element of Web3. It reminds me of when someone's a fan of a band, right? They love being a fan of the band early on, and the band makes it on the radio, and they're so jaded, and you're wait, that's the band's life goals and dreams. And I feel there's an interesting cross section right now in Web3 where people that have their things almost two together are looked at as like, oh, they're like the Web 2 versions taking over our Web 3. And then you have the opposite side where like everyone, we don't know anyone's names that are founders, and we're like, they're setting us up for a scam. And I've been saying this on, I've known Kevin Rose. I was on a panel with him in 2013, actually, funny enough, at South by Southwest. And like, I think there's space for that whole world. And I would say you guys kind of fall in that like middle side, or even more leaning towards the Moonbird side on pre-funded, experienced businessmen that are a part of the project. All-star art, you have tokenomics built in, and it's not like, hey, we're going to launch a coin at some time. For our listeners, jump on the website. Like, you've broken down a lot of the mechanics behind that. How would you like maybe even advise or just give your take on that? Because I think it's such an unfortunate thing that we want everyone to have these check boxes. And then if you have too many of the checks, we now are like almost too afraid that you're like too polished, too good. And I think for those that are out there, this is do your own damn research. You decide the projects that you're a part of. But I'm so bullish, pun intended, on projects that have their shit together, because let's face it, the opportunity for a rug pull, like what it would do to each of your individual personal brands and who you are as individuals would be, the risk is way too high in my personal opinion there. But what's your take on kind of like the even like the Moonbirds trend now? Like you didn't know Moonbirds was coming out like 14 days before your project, but give me your thoughts on just kind of that kind of impression of like when things are too good, too pulled together, how that's kind of being taken in Web3.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because first of all, I think it's not one size fits all. I think there will be a sub community that are OG, and it's pure Web3 decentralization, DAO. It's trustless, and it'll be everything that is core to Web3. There'll be some people that just say that's all I want to be involved in, and that's okay. And I think there's room for it. But there's another group of people that is saying, hey, I see NFTs as something that can be mainstream, that there's going to be mainstream adoption. And for those people, if you want mainstream adoption, then some of those check boxes are going to have to start to be checked. Because if they're not, and I love Moonbirds, big fan of Kevin Rose. So I'm really pleased to see what they're doing. And it's a project that I think can be successful for sure. So I'm really pleased to see it. And I think that we're in the same vein. And so I do think that we're going to bring some of that to the table, also in a little bit of a different approach, but similar check boxes. We're going to need people that respect Web3 and that Web3 can respect. And so I hopefully we're one of those people that can be that bridge. But let's be clear, mainstream adoption and true big companies are coming.
Right.
And so if we're not in Web3, and I'm going to say we as I'm in Web3, if we're not careful, they're just going to blow us by. And so we've got to push back and make sure that they respect the essence of what it means to be Web3. But we also got to be accepting of Web 2 coming into Web 3. Again, otherwise they're just gonna overtake the technology and do things their way. So it's going to be a little bit of a back and forth and a balance between the two.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too that a lot of like the OGs and those that like were early and right place, right time, in some cases, right project. What Yuga Labs is now created, right? From they have the resources and the power to be the Web 2 gorilla. And I feel like I find it interesting that those with a, Bored Ape, a PFP are often right now ones that are questioning those that are like, bringing innovation and power to the market. I'm like, hold on a second. And you can't stay on both sides of that fence as well. So I really appreciate your honesty. I was really excited for this interview. For me, part of it was being able to ask you some of the questions that, I wouldn't even say they're tough questions, but they're questions that I believe by you answering them, they're going to answer a lot of questions that I know that the community needs to hear, that people need to hear as well. I'll kind of turn it over to you. Any last words, any last information about the project, things that people will be aware of, and we'll make sure all the links, of course, are in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So just the number one thing I want people to take away is that, we're we're here for the long term. We're building a company. We're building a brand. It's not going to be a one mint thing. We're looking at, from a company perspective, we're looking at multiple revenue streams. We're not focusing solely on just minting more NFTs and more NFTs and more NFTs. We're looking at, there's a whole community aspect around events and experience and living your best life that we didn't get to. There's the NFT aspect around tokenomics again. And then the third one is, we're going into the physical world pretty darn quickly. We already have a prototype for a physical card game. So like a Magic the Gathering type of a card game. So we are going to be attacking it from multiple angles. We're building a brand. We're building an entertainment media company that's born in Web3, that has a backbone in Web3, but not confined to Web3.
Well, I really appreciate that take. For our listeners too, the Moonbirds scams that are still being passed around right now are out of this world. Please do not click on any links. I don't care if it's a verified Twitter account. It could be someone that was your friend. It could be my Twitter account. And if there is a link to a project that looks too good to be true or is asking you to connect your wallet, please do not do that. I will put in the links the official Twitter account for this project. It's Bulls Apes Proj, Proj on Twitter. Make sure that you're starting origin from there anytime you're interacting with the website, their contract. I know just from the research that I've done on the project, there will be hype on this project, pre-mint, mint day, a couple of days after, people trying to take advantage of people having the FOMO, clicking on a link. And I just don't want people to be scammed on that. And, I also love, the commitment to, education. You guys have some other events coming up in your Discord. I know you have the Tank Man. You're doing a thing around Tank Man and tokenomics as well. I already was like, oh, I got to make sure I tune in for that, because I'm always about, kind of educating and pushing limits. And then, the last thing, we added a DAM to do your own DAM research. So it's DYODR here for our podcast listeners. We even had, shout out to one of our listeners who got it tattooed on his forearm, the DYODR. But, I would just say for everyone that's out there, right, the do your own research is in every component, right, of the project itself, but also, is it a project that you want to be a part of, that the utility, that the community are people that you want to be a part of? And if you do your research, and the project, not talking about this project specifically, but the projects might not be the best fit for you individually, let's do our best to, rather than spread FUD or rumors or be jaded, let's support, amplify, and celebrate great projects that are innovating, that are working to do their best. I think it's very unfortunate in this space right now that, there are people talking bad about Moonbirds. And I believe only reason, my own personal opinion, is because they missed out on the raffle and they feel like they missed that hype. And guess what? There's a new project every day. There's going to be more opportunities. And I just challenge everyone, do your own, damn research on yourself too. Like, hey, is this liquidity that is worth my spend, that I'm going to have the time to get the value of the utility? And if not, the beauty of this space is you might not mint, and a month later, you're going to be able to do additional research. And maybe at that point, buying into the project on secondary is something that is worthwhile for you. So thanks so much for being a guest on our show. I will make sure the links are out there. We're going to include the project in our Mint 365 project. Actually, it'll be right around the halfway mark. We're almost to the halfway mark of buying an NFT every day for 365 days. So for all of our listeners, for everyone that's out there, until tomorrow, make it a great day. Cheers.
Thanks.
All right.